There are so many people out there these days, especially post-COVID, who are trying to make a living from a handmade business. And a lot of you might be wondering, is it actually possible to make a full-time living from a handmade business? The answer is yes, it is absolutely 100% possible to make a good full-time income from a handmade business. However, it's not easy and not everybody manages to achieve it. Today, I want to talk about the numbers behind this and discuss how you can and who has and what is actually possible and what sort of money it's possible to make having a handmade business. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess Van Den. I talk about how to have a thriving and profitable handmade business and a happy and healthy work from home lifestyle. Hope you enjoy this. If you do, please do give me a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. So how much money do handmade business owners actually make? Well, I have some statistics to help you with this. I've taken some data from two places. One is an Etsy survey that they have done, and the other one is the State of Handmade survey that myself, Michaela, and Deborah have done over at The Business of Making. So the Etsy one is called the Global Seller Census, and I have the data from the 2020 edition of that. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in this. And I'm going to be talking about the data from the most recent State of Handmade survey, which was for the year 2020 as well. So before I dive into that data, I want to give myself and talk a little bit about my own business as an example. The most profitable year my own jewelry business, Ethereal, had, in that year, I brought in over $68,000 in gross income. Now, that is before any expenses or taxes or anything else was taken out. That is just the gross income that came in to my jewelry business just from selling jewelry. Now, when my business got to this high point, I had been in business at this point for over 5 years. So it had taken me many years to build up to that point. So this is the most important thing to remember. And all of the data that I've looked at in our State of Handmade survey definitely sort of reinforces this, is that most people who do make a full-time living from their handmade business, it takes them on average around 5 years to reach the point of being able to make enough money for it to be a solid full-time income. Some people do it sooner. Some people do it later, some people never do it at all, but that's a bit of an average. So for the people who are just starting out, just know that it's perfectly normal to only be making a little bit of money in those first few years. Now, my first year in business, I think I made something like $4,000, which is actually a lot more than a lot of people make in their first year these days. This was, remember, back in 2008. That is when I started my business. So it was a long time ago. It was a very different world. However, it was also the year of the global financial crash or crisis or whatever they call it these days. And I still managed, starting in October 2008 through to the next, the end of June, because that's our tax year in Australia, goes from the 1st of July to the 30th of June. 30 days has September, April, June, and yep, that's right, 30 days. I always have to do the rhyme. I can never remember off the top of my head. So I made something like $4,000-ish. I honestly can't remember exactly. It might have been $3,000 because I literally cannot find that stuff anywhere. PayPal doesn't go back that far. I tried to find the actual numbers for you, but I literally have no record that I could find of how much money my business made in its first year because it was so long ago. What I do remember is that I basically covered my costs. And of course, the first year is always expensive because you're buying tools and materials and trying different things and taking courses. And so I may have covered my costs, maybe plus a little bit. I honestly can't remember, but it wasn't a lot of money. And it certainly wasn't anywhere near a full-time income. But over the years after that, the business grew and I went full-time in 2010, kind of accidentally. As I said in I think my previous video or the one before that, if you're interested in that story, let me know and I will do a video on it, how that happened. And I threw myself into the business, and over the next few years, it reached that point of making a decent amount of income. Now that number has fluctuated over the years. It's gone down some years, up some years. There have been years where I've had 3 months off because I've gone overseas. There have been years where I've done really, really well. Obviously, COVID has had an impact on my business because the shipping class we used to be able to do free shipping worldwide, but the shipping class we used to use doesn't exist anymore because Australia Post got rid of it. So we can't do free shipping anymore, which has impacted our international sales really substantially. Obviously, a big also, well, probably not obviously if you don't know my business, but a big part of my jewelry business is wedding rings. So that's definitely been impacted quite severely over the last 2 years because less people have been getting married because they couldn't have weddings. So that has definitely impacted my business income. And, things like that will always happen over the years. But long story short, we're still making good income from the jewelry business alongside obviously running Create and Thrive and my other online businesses and income. If you're curious about all the ways I make money, check out my last video where I actually talked about all the ways I've made money online in the past 2 decades. With all of the things that I do, we make a very comfortable living for 2 people now because my husband is fully employed in the business as well. So that's a little bit of my background, just to give you an idea of one person's story. Let's now look at the numbers, the larger numbers, and look at what we can see from other people's stories and where they're at with their businesses. So when I looked at the Etsy census data, and I'll put a link to that document in the description below if you want to look through those results for yourself, it found that 30% of the creative businesses on and off Etsy, for 30% of people who responded, it is their sole occupation. So their creative business is the only way that they are making money. Now, this would lead you to think that they are making a full-time living from that, but it doesn't tell us how much they are earning, and it doesn't tell us if they, for example, have a spouse or a partner who has a good job or has another business that pays for the mortgage and other bills. So we don't actually know how many of those people are literally making a full-time living from their business. We just know that for 30%, it is their sole occupation. And we can infer that some percentage of that, probably a decent percentage of that, are making good money from their business. I certainly know of numerous people who are making a good, solid living from their Etsy shops and their handmade businesses. I've worked with those people. I know those people, and they definitely are out there, and there's plenty of them. Now, when I had a look at our State of Handmade survey results, the good thing about that is that we actually got much more detailed about the amount of money people were making, and we dove into the details, like how much gross income, how much profit, what is, if you're partnered, what are they doing? Do you have another job on the side? So we talked about all of that sort of stuff so that we got a much clearer idea of who is actually, out of the respondents, making a decent living from their business. And I will link to that as well in the description below. In fact, I'll link to the last 2 years because we started this, and the first one we did was pre-COVID. So I think looking at those two side by side, and we also got a much larger respondent number in the first survey, I think because it was new and exciting. So you can look into that data as well if you're interested in this. So just a few numbers pulled out of the State of Handmade survey. In Australia, 36.34% of people made over $25,000 in 2020 from their creative business, and 11.67 people made over $50,000. So that's a decent amount, it's over 10% are making over $50,000. And in Australia, I would class 50,000 as an okay middle class income. It's probably on the lower end these days, but if you had, 2 people making that amount of money, they'd be doing pretty well. So in the USA, 23.81% of people made over $25,000 in 2020, and 11.91% made over $50,000. So very similar percentages there for the Australian respondents and the American respondents, which is good because it gives us a bit of an idea that at least in Western countries, we're seeing a similar trend across different countries of a number of people who are actually making a decent amount of money out of this. So there's more breakdown in the results themselves. Like some people are making well over $100,000 a year. It's not many, but it does exist. And I think 1 or 2 of our respondents were even making over $200,000 a year. So there are definitely some people out there making huge amounts of money, well, what I would call huge amounts of money from a handmade business. Of course, you may know of other handmade businesses that have kind of gone mainstream, like think Jonathan Adler in the US, Robert Gordon here in Australia. Those are businesses that started off as a small handmade business and have grown into basically empires, where the initial founder starts hiring people, gets their stuff produced, and grows their business. There's no reason why you couldn't do that too if that's something that you really wanted to do. But I know most of us who have a handmade business probably just want to keep it small and keep it at home. I know I do. The whole point of having a handmade business to me is that I can, work from home, do my own thing, be in charge of my business, not have to hire employees, and sort of move into that managerial position, although I am obviously also the manager of my work. But it's different when you're responsible for other people's livelihoods as well, right? So that just gives you a little indication of how many people out there are making a good living from the handmade business. So if you have been in doubt that it's possible, here's the proof that it is absolutely possible. It's also the proof that a lot of people don't get there. Now, we don't know why that is, whether it's because they choose to not get there or whether it's because they just haven't managed to figure it out yet. We didn't ask those sorts of questions per se. So I just wanted to give you that little bit of hope and that little bit of knowledge about the potential that exists there to make a full-time living from your handmade goods. And remember that obviously there's a lot of people out there who are happy to keep it as a hobby, happy for it to be a little side hustle, not looking necessarily to make it a full-time thing. So for those who are and who have, it is absolutely 100% possible, even today. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again soon with another one, and bye for now.